There are 3 passages in the Bible where people take them out of context, thinking that Jesus or God is hiding specific information as far as the timing of specific events. Not related to the rapture, but specifically related to the second coming. And this comes from, actually we'll look at this. Acts 1:7 was specifically what I was asked about. Matthew 24:36 and 1 Thessalonians 5:1. These all say a similar thing, but they have entirely different contexts. And I will say that the word no in all of them is, if the word no is there, it means something different, but the contexts are different even though they're the same. So Acts 1:7 is what we're talking about. He said unto them, "It is not for you to know the times or the seasons which the Father hath put in his own power." You have to remember that his disciples in Acts 1 are with him just prior to his ascension. And the preceding verse is, "Wilt thou at this time restore the kingdom to Israel?" That's what Acts 1:6 says. "When they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom of Israel?" Now, you have to backtrack to Matthew 21 because that was the kingdom presentation. And it was taken off of the table because he was rejected. And it was delayed to a second coming. Now they are asking him, will you do it now? And he said, it is not for you to know the times or the seasons which the Father hath put in his own power, because it was delayed to a second coming. That was prophesied in Matthew 26, when the disciples came to him privately saying, what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Because he had already delayed the kingdom to a second coming in Matthew 21. So Matthew 24, he's prophesying about what the lead up to that kingdom presentation will be, the signs of his coming. They're 70th week specific, and the end of the world, which is the return of Christ to burn the earth and the works therein up and establish his righteous kingdom. So this actually dovetails off of Matthew 24 when he prophesied about the 70th week as the immediate lead up to the second coming. The second coming being the earthly kingdom presentation, because it was delayed from his first presentation because they rejected him. This was written about in Matthew, or spoken about in Matthew 21. After the triumphal entry, he said to the religious leaders, when they were trying to make him quiet the people, and he said, did thou never read in the scriptures, the stone which the builders rejected, the same is made the head of the corner. It is the Lord's doing, it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I say unto you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you, delayed, and in the interim given to a nation bringing forth the fruits thereof. So the 4 days from the time the kingdom was taken from them until the cross, when he shut up the old covenant, instituted the new, and then the next thousands of years, which include the dispensation of the grace of God and include the 70th week, are the interim between the first and the second kingdom presentations. So in Matthew 24, he's prophesying about the 70th week that will lead up to the second coming. And in Acts, right before he leaves, they ask, are you going to do it at this time? And he says, no. Essentially, he says no. And when I do it, you're not going to be involved, not from the earthly perspective. And then obviously 1 Thessalonians 5:1 talks about this also. Paul writing to the church at Thessalonica in the 50s, end of the 50s, or early 60s AD, he says, but of the times and seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you. And this is not that they couldn't know, it's that you have no need that I write unto you. Why? Because in the previous chapter, he talked about the pre-trib rapture. The times and the seasons is always going to be a reference to the immediate lead up to and the event itself, which it means times and seasons equals. Times is the Greek word chronos, which is a chronology of time, and seasons is kairos, it's an appointed time. So the reference to times and seasons, day and hour, will always be a reference to the 70th week and the second coming. Now the church at Thessalonica obviously wasn't going to be there. They were believers. They would have, even if it was going to be in their natural lifetimes, which we know it wasn't in hindsight now. But even if it were to be in their natural lifetimes, still wouldn't have needed to know about the times and seasons because they wouldn't have been there. They would have been removed in the pre-trib rapture. They would have been absent from the events of the 70th week and absent the earth from, absent the second coming from an earthly perspective. They would have been with the group returning with him. And that is exactly what he said in the previous chapter in 1 Thessalonians 4. He says, I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him, because they would have been removed in the pre-trib rapture. So the times and the seasons, he's not going to write to them specifically. You have no need that I write unto you, because it didn't pertain to them. It's not that they couldn't know the specifics. If they were alive for another 40 years after that, they would have had the revelation of Jesus Christ to know the specifics. John wrote that in 95 AD. But he's not saying they can't know. It says the purpose of which he's writing to them doesn't include that because it doesn't pertain to them. So specifically, what we're looking at in Acts 1, 6, and 7, understanding that the offering of the earthly kingdom occurred in Matthew 21, and it was delayed when they rejected him to a second coming. The immediate lead up to will be the 7 years prior, which is Daniel's 70th week. So he was not going to restore the kingdom to Israel at that time because the restoration of the kingdom to Israel comes with the second coming. So the answer to that isn't a vague, you just don't need to worry about that. That's not what he's saying. If we actually look this verse up, and in all of these verses, he's not just telling them vague, arbitrary brush-offs. There's nothing in here that says people can't know. In fact, the beginning of the 70th week and the second coming, down to the day, month, year, and time of day, are all in the Old Testament prophets. He's never once telling people they can't know specific calendar times and days. This is in the case of the church at Thessalonica. It just didn't pertain to them. So he didn't need to spend the time involving them in a conversation, this new fledgling church, with deep philosophical issues that didn't pertain to them. Let's get the basics of salvation down first, and then you can get into the meat later. But you also have to remember that the church of Thessalonica, or you have to know if you didn't know, the church of Thessalonica was a newborn fledgling church. You teach them the milk of the word, not the meat of the word. It wasn't contextually, it wouldn't have been doing them any favors to confuse them with issues that they didn't need to know at that time. They needed to be concerned with the very basics of salvation, have that down pat before you start venturing into other subject matter. So that was outside the scope of his teaching to in 1 Thessalonians, because the church wasn't ready to receive that type of information yet. Matthew 24 is, like I said, 70th week specific and second coming specific. This word, knoweth, is the Greek word eido, which means to have seen or perceived, hence to know, specifically through sight. It is the visual understanding of the day of the Lord through your eyes. And because it is unparalleled in human history, no man, no angel, not even the Son in his humanity, because he had a natural lifespan from birth to that time, that didn't occur. There was no reference point given where somebody can say, oh, I saw that happen before, so the future will be like that. Like from a visual reference point, there is nothing on the historical timeline for any created being that ever understands what the second coming is going to bring, because specifically this is the heavens and the earth. Verse 35 talks about the passing away of the heavens and the earth. But all of the things that will occur on the day of the second coming have never been witnessed before. No one has a visual reference point for what the second coming will look like. You have to be there to see it, to understand it. That's what this is talking about. It has nothing to do with understanding on a calendar what the specific day and time is. Not a single thing. It is a reference point visually that doesn't exist except for the Father and his foreknowledge. So, understanding that Jesus was not going to restore the kingdom to Israel at that time, right before he ascended, because the restoration of the kingdom to Israel will come with the second coming. Peter writes about this in Acts 3, where it says the heavens must receive Jesus until the time of restitution of all things, that the times of refreshing shall come from the presence of the Lord. That's what he's talking about, is the restoration of the kingdom to Israel. The restitution of all things will happen when he returns at the second coming, which had been delayed from Matthew 21, prophesied by Jesus specifically in Matthew 21 that it was delayed. So they're asking him, is it going to happen now? And he says, not only does he say no, he tells them that when it does occur, it wouldn't apply to them. So this is the specific question in view. He said unto them, it is not for you to know the times or the seasons which the Father hath put in his own power. What did we already establish about times, chronos, seasons, kairos? It is a specific reference to the 70th week and the second coming from an earthly perspective. The disciples in Acts 1 are now believers under new covenant. They had been sealed by the Spirit, even though it hadn't come at Pentecost yet in Acts 2. He had breathed on them at the end of John in chapter 20. It says he breathed on them and they received the Spirit. So these are Holy Spirit indwelled believers in Jesus Christ under new covenant. What does that tell you? That they will participate in the rapture, which occurs before the 70th week and before the second coming to earth. They would be part of the group that is, the Lord my God shall come and all the saints with thee. So effectively what he's telling them in Acts 1:7 is, even if he would have done it in their, what would be their natural lifetime, they still would have been removed in the rapture prior to it, and they wouldn't have experienced the times or the seasons. That is exactly what he's telling them. It is not for you to experience firsthand the 70th week, chronos, or the second coming from an earthly perspective, kairos, which the Father hath put in his own power. When we go to, I have Blue Letter Bible up here, and this is Acts 1:7. Down here in the KJV, it is not for you to know the times and the seasons which the Father hath put in his own power. Know is the Greek word ginosko. And this is, I'm just gonna, right here, the Greek word ginosko. Properly to know, especially through personal experience, first-hand acquaintance. The disciples, all Jesus is telling them, very importantly, is they would not know through first-hand experience the 70th week or the second coming from an earthly perspective, because they would have been part of the group to participate in the rapture of the church, which Paul would reveal later in Ephesians 3. Had not yet been spoken to them, although it also was less directly, but it was in the book of John. And you can follow the sequence of the book of John through these steps of the ancient Jewish wedding ceremony. Jesus prophesying in John 14 that though he would go into the Father's house, he would return and take them unto himself, that where he is, there they may be also. He actually did prophesy about that more indirectly to them in John 14, but Paul picked up on it later. Essentially what this says, if you understand the words in Greek being used in their context, are you going to restore the kingdom of Israel at this time? No, because the restoration of the kingdom of Israel comes at the second coming. And he says it is not for you to firsthand experience the 70th week lead up to, or from an earthly perspective, that event. They would be with him when he returns. The Lord my God shall come and all the saints with thee. At that point, he'll restore the kingdom to Israel, and they will go into it doing exactly what he told them they would do in Matthew 18. Matthew 19? Right here. Then he then answered Peter and said, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? And Jesus said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, the restitution of all things, when Jesus comes and establishes the kingdom in Israel, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. That is what they will be doing when they return. The Lord my God shall come and all the saints with thee. The 12 apostles will be with him at that time, not on earth to experience the restoration of the kingdom of Israel from an earthly perspective, but rather from a heavenly one.